Okay, with all the scuttlebutt about the apparitions of Garabandal, whether they're approved, whether they're not approved, it's pretty complicated. I'm not necessarily someone who's convinced of it. I actually haven't really thought about it that much. However, as it is sort of the scuttlebutt right now, I thought that I would read some information that people can find helpful. It is from a website called garabandal.it. It is a pro-Garabandal website, but it includes a collection of the church's the various documentation from the church on the matter, bishops, congregations, that sort of thing. It has its own commentary. I'm not endorsing all the commentary, but this is what they're saying, and I'm just going to read it, and then the viewer can make their own decisions. So this is from garabandal.it, garabandal.it. It's in English, but I think it's an Italian domain name. Anyway, okay, so this is from the section on their website called The Church's Position. And I'm going to read it, and maybe a little bit of commentary here and there, but more or less just going to read it. So it says, the Church's position on Garabandal. There is an overall confusion regarding the Church's position on Garabandal. The girls themselves predicted that the message of Garabandal would find difficulty in being accepted. Now, the critic would say, of course they said that, because then they could say that when it's not accepted, that's proof that it's accepted, and that's fair. On the other hand, for example, Joan of Arc talked about apparition and she was executed as a heretic. So that's interesting. And we obviously believe her now, because she's been canonized. She's a great saint. And of course, people did believe that she was telling the truth for many years, even though her statements would not have been approved. So that's something to just consider. I'm not saying that that's the same thing. It's just, it's a historical anecdote. In addition, I believe St. Louis de Montfort said that about one of his books, I can't remember which one, but he said this will be lost for many years. The devil will try to hide it. That did happen, and then it was found. So I don't know. These are just food for thought, to be fair to the Garabandal crowd, of which I'm not. However, I'm not necessarily anti. Anyway, in the case of the apparitions of Garabandal, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith could have intervened and taken over the investigation of the apparitions, removing it from the hands of the Bishop of Santander. However, the congregation has persistently refused to disrupt the process, arguing that no event of significance has occurred of recent, and therefore the congregation has no reason to intervene. They ended up leaving the situation in the hands of the bishop, including that which concerned the issuing of directives, and commending him for the zeal he had shown in this matter. It can be inferred that in the event that the warning or the miracle announced should come to pass, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith could change their position. Thus, at least for the time being, the congregation maintains the position that is so often chosen in the past, accepting the status quo and await results. I don't really know if that's the position chosen in the past. However, given the nature of this idea that the proof of this will be something that will come at some other time in history, that does make it problematic when trying to make a significant ruling on it. Whereas with Fatima, for example, the predictions were on this date, this will happen, on this date, this will happen, and it did happen right away with the miracle of the sun, so that was easy to prove. So it is different in that sense. Does it make it false? I don't know. I'm just saying this is what is said. Statements from the bishops of Santander. Although two committees convened by the bishops of Santander declared that there were no phenomena capable of authenticating the facts as undoubtedly supernatural, they did not condemn the message. In this regard, the first commission stated, "We find nothing in need of ecclesiastical censure or condemnation, neither in the doctrine nor in the spiritual recommendations supposedly addressed to the faithful." I do agree with that, by the way. When you read the messages, they seem pretty orthodox. Bishop Juan Antonio del Val, who called the second commission, upon retiring from office, stated that the message of Garabandal was important and theologically correct. This is true. However, I believe similar things were said about Our Lady of America, which I think Cardinal Burke approved of, or at least approved of the spirit of the thing for a while, saying there was no problem in sort of looking into this and praying along with the messages, because they are perfectly orthodox as far as I can tell. However, it was ultimately not approved. Whether that will be in the future, I don't know, but this is not uncommon with apparitions. They could be said to not have had a supernatural character, but at the same time could be perfectly orthodox. So I don't know. 4 consecutive bishops of Santander have spoken out against the supernatural character of the apparitions of Garabandal, which has weighed heavily among the faithful. Here is a brief summary of the statements made by the various bishops who have served the diocese since the beginning of the apparitions until today. Bishop Doroteo Fernandez, apostolic administrator from May 1961 to January 1962, published 2 notes. The first was published just a little over 2 months following the start of the apparitions and just a month after the first denials of Conchita, in which he affirmed that there was no evidence confirming the supernatural character of the apparitions. The commission only made 2 or 3 visits to the site of the apparitions. Bishop Eugenio Beitia Aldazabal, pretty good Spanish, January 1962 to January 65, also published 2 notes. The first says that such phenomena lack any supernatural origin and have an explanation of natural order. This judgment was undoubtedly premature. This is the opinion of the writer, not my opinion, as the Episcopal Commission appointed to investigate what was happening in Garabandal made no serious scientific examination. He also imposed restrictions on the priests who went up to the town without permission from the diocese. However, he did not condemn what was taking place and affirmed, quote, "We have not found anything deserving ecclesiastical censure or condemnation either in the doctrine or in the spiritual recommendations that have been published as having been addressed to the faithful, as they contain an exhortation to prayer and sacrifice, Eucharistic devotion to Our Lady in traditional and commendable ways, and a holy fear of God who is offended by our sins." Now remember, this is while the Second Vatican Council was taking place. This would have been a traditional bishop, let's put it that way. So to say traditional, that's a good thing. Bishop Vicente Puchol Montis said he was between 65 and 67. He said, tried to put an end to Garabandal. He published a note no longer based on the report of the technical committee like those of his predecessors, but on the statement of the visionaries, which according to Bishop Puchol demonstrates that there have not been apparitions or messages and that, quote, "all the events that have taken place in this town have a natural explanation." The next bishop, Bishop Lajondo, he was a bishop from 1968 to 1971, was strongly opposed to Garabandal and managed through Cardinal Jean Villot. Cardinal Villot was a really bad actor in the Vatican, by the way, so that should tell you something. To present the national and foreign press with a new note on the events of Garabandal on October 9th, 1968. I don't know what that was because I don't put it here. Bishop Juan Antonio del Valgallo was, and from 71 to 91, was the only bishop of Santander who had seen the visionaries in ecstasy. With him, there was a change in the official position on Garabandal. In 1987, he opened a new investigation of the apparitions and lifted the ban on priests visiting the site, allowing them to celebrate Mass in the village church with the pastor's permission. Although in these notes, for the time being, the bishops do not find anything supernatural about the alleged apparitions, a question that remains open to revision in light of new information or in light of a better scientific study of existing information, they have said nothing against the content thereof. And this was and is precisely their role as a church that instructs. Fair enough. So this is an evaluation of the notes from the bishops of Santander. To properly evaluate the unfavorable judgment of the 4 bishops of Santander, one must consider the grounds on which they base their claims, i.e., in the case of the first 2, on the report of the technical committee, and in the case of the other 2, on not only the judgment of the previous bishops, but also on the denials of the visionaries. This committee apparently consisted of 3 canons and professors from Santander. The fact is, there is more than enough information to suspect on reasonable grounds that these members of the commission adopted an a priori preconceived negative attitude regarding the apparitions of Garabandal, an attitude we can summarize in the fact that for them it was unacceptable that the Blessed Virgin Mary could appear so often, in such an uncommon and rare fashion, to 4 girls from a small village in the mountains of Santander, and therefore everything had to be attributed to the imagination of 4 girls encouraged by the pilgrims who continually flocked to Garabandal. That does give me pause. if I'm being honest. Our Lady did appear multiple times to Fatima children. And she did appear many times to Mother Mariana and Our Lady of Good Success, although that was over many, many years, and she was a very holy nun. And this Fatima children, it was 6 times and it was done. So that does give me pause that there's this element here in the Garabandal one. I'm just being honest. Within 40 days of the first apparitions, Conchita, who was considered their main protagonist, was transferred to Santander at the request of certain members of the committee in an effort to bring an end to the alleged apparitions, recommending a good environment of distractions in Santander as treatment to rid her of her fantasies or hallucinations. In addition, the committee members rarely visited the site of the events, as numerous eyewitnesses affirm, and consequently they witnessed very few ecstasies and extraordinary phenomena. According to reports from reliable witnesses, the member who witnessed most was only present on 6 occasions, always demonstrating an evidently negative preconceived bias. I have to be honest. I should have had that big. I mean, only witnessed 6 ecstasies. I mean, I don't really understand I'm just being honest. I don't understand the logic here. Do you have to? I mean, is there a minimum amount you have to see? You know, I don't get that. I'm just trying to be fair here. Okay. Let's continue. Let's just go to the statements of the Holy See. With respect to the Holy See, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith did not issue or publish any statement in its name addressed to the entire Catholic world on the events of Garabandal. It has never been publicly or officially it has never publicly or officially expressed its opinion on these contemporary apparitions in Spain. However, the Secretary of the Congregation has sent 2 letters to bishops of Santander and another more recently to the Archbishop Hanan of New Orleans, but they are not formal statements directed to the Catholic world in the name of the congregation, nor do they possess the authority assigned to such official statements. In these letters sent to the persons mentioned, the congregation never included a positive statement expressing agreement with the judgment of the bishops of Santander. These letters have praised the various bishops of Santander for the prudence and pastoral zeal they displayed in overseeing the apparitions of Garabandal, but they gave no explicit agreement to the verdict of the bishops of Santander, which refused to admit the divine origin of Garabandal. Therefore, the Sacred Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith has jealously guarded silence about its views on the events of Garabandal. Even the strong support it has given to the Bishop of Santander is far from being an opinion of the character of those events, of those facts. As long as it does not assume responsibility for the investigation, the congregation can only support the work of the diocese, which, however, does not imply concordance with the diocese on doctrinal matter. Interestingly enough, the constant pressure placed on the congregation by the Diocese of Santander in those years to obtain a declaration that would close the case of Garabandal, pressure documented in correspondence published between the two entities, never obtained the desired statement neither from the Cardinal nor from the Pope. Thus, officially speaking, on both a diocesan level and in terms of the Vatican, the case remains open, gathering new information. Visiting clergy can celebrate Mass in the local church. Technically speaking, the case of the apparitions of Garabandal cannot be closed until 2 great prophecies are fulfilled, the warning and the miracle. So, I'm not really sure what to think of this. My gut tells me that it might be reaching a little bit. However, the messages are pretty striking, and they all do seem to be pretty bang on. I don't know. There's more that maybe we can talk about, but I think that's enough for today. You can find that at garabandal.it. Talk to you next time.